Cecilia, ABC. There you are. Oh,
Thank you. Sir, you've made it very clear in this conflict that you do not want to see World War III. But is it possible that in expressing that so early that you were too quick to rule out direct military intervention in this war? Could Putin have been emboldened knowing that you are not going to get involved directly in this conflict?
no and no.
You do not believe that.
Cecilia, ABC. There you are.
So what do you think, Joe? Was that other Joe too quick to rule out starting World War III and ended all of human civilization?
As a Joe, I can't speak for all Joes, man. I guess if you're president, technically you're an above average Joe, but that doesn't like guarantee above average, takes. I don't know. What I kind of miss what she said there. Did she say bold?
Yeah. I mean, the gist of the question was, you've made it very clear you don't want to start World War III, but by expressing so clearly the conflict that you weren't willing to, go to war with Russia, do you think you've emboldened them? So literally at a White House press conference, we got. You're not going to start World War III? I mean,
she's
why not?
Press calling. You mean we're not going to get a nuclear exchange? What? Yeah. What's the deal? You're tough on. Aren't you tough on crime or?
Yeah.
I don't know what.
Yeah.
The cheerleading. It's. The Trump years gave us a lot of us journalists. That is, gave us a lot of like stirring moments where we could feel like some solidarity for our fellow journalists. But then, with Biden in power, it's just back to like, just getting red with shame.
I mean, I've got to say, every time I see one of these press conferences since the invasion of Ukraine started, it makes me just a little bit, some tiny part of me kind of like Joe Biden, because the press corps is fucking insane right now.
Blood in their teeth, man. And he's it would be nice if he responded in some of like the classic Joe Biden way, like, listen, fat, you dog-faced pony soldier, we're not getting a World War III, okay? And he's mixing up like, we're not going to war with Xi Jinping, Vladimir Putin. That would be great. I would have. But
yeah, exactly. I saw Ryan Grimm posted this. I'm not sure who this guy is, but Jeremy Slevin, I guess it's a little satire at the White House press conferences.
Oh, let's hear it.
Hi, yes. I mean, we all understand Putin is a bully, right? And he only understands strength. And by strength, I kind of mean like, you get me? Hi, yes, New York Times. What's going on with the no-fly zone? They seem to be flying, and the no aspect is not really being engaged. Are we going to blow the fuck out of them? Hi, Greg, keeping up with the Washington Post. Ukraine has been asking for you to beat the fuck out of these guys. When's that happening? Okay. Would be kind of a dope story. Hi, yes, I'm not a reporter. I'm just a guy. But is there any chance that we could possibly... They make like tinier versions of nukes, right? Just limited, right? That, and also, are we going to get ground forces over there doing some cool kind of like fucking Navy SEAL shit, fucking cool, like, because that would look wild on television. I myself would go there and film some of that. Are we going to get some of that done? What he said, because I have an insane graphic for a war story. Like it's kind of like you ever seen the Call of Duty Black Ops cover? It's kind of like that, but like with Zelensky holding two pistols. Like it would look amazing on a lower third.
Oh my god!
And then the best thing about that is that that we got the World War III question today, which is literally crazier than the parody.
Yeah, we've been dealing for weeks of just it not being clear what a no-fly zone means, and they keep asking for it. And now it's, I mean, they can't even play between those lines anymore. They have to, is the fact that President Biden didn't start World War III going to make him look weak in the midterms? It's like, it's just like, don't give these people ideas, man. It's depressing.
No, it is on the level of the media in Don't Look Up. You know,
And-
I mean, like that's the
Ooh. And it is hard for us to give Biden some credit, right, for like how they've positioned towards Ukraine. There's lots of things we can criticize, but
sure.
you know, it is one of those things where doing nothing or you know, doing
Yeah.
less than they want obviously is a good thing. And
No, I will take doing nothing over ending human civilization every day.
that's what Joe is good at. That's what Joe Biden's good at. So
no, he is, and like this is what
yeah.
I said. People got mad about this. I said this on Twitter the other day that like when Biden a while ago he tweeted essentially we're not going to start World War III, and there were a lot of responses like from including from some blue checks with like hundreds of thousands of followers that were like about an inch away from just being like, why not, pussy? I mean, why won't you, right? Like, and
the ghouls came out in force. It was like the end of Poltergeist. Like they were shooting up out of the ground. It was terrifying, dude. Like that. Yeah, I'm with you on that. They were. It's just calling for blood. You know.
No, exactly. But what I did say, Twitter is that okay. Look at what happened here, though. If Donald Trump had posted that same tweet and he got in those same responses, like he would have just been getting angrier and angrier reading them. It would have been like 3 a.m. He would have been like pissed off and like, he would have had stuff to prove.
Yeah.
I think it's entirely possible that Donald Trump would have started World War III by now. Whereas like Biden, probably for a tweet that important, like he probably did sign off on the wording, but other than that, right, it's like he, they probably showed him the tweet. He was like, yeah, that's fine. And then he went back to sleep because he's Biden. He doesn't give a shit.
I think I saw you post that like, is it safe to assume we would have been in World War III by now had, Donald Trump, who knows what crazy tack Donald Trump would have taken, like we'll inject the Russians with bleach or whatever, crazy. Like it's just, this is like the harm reduction vote of Joe Biden. Like he really hasn't done that much better on COVID, right? It's been, there's a lot of like blue MAGA shit going on, with immigration and a lot of these other policies. But, I mean, Trump killed, what was that Iranian general's name?
Soleimani.
Right? Yeah, Soleimani. I mean, he just iced a beloved Iranian military leader, and to think that these weren't making things more precarious overseas is to me like definitely naive.
Totally. I mean, like he ripped up the Iran nuclear deal. He assassinated Soleimani, which, again is in fact, I believe. Okay, yeah. So he did that, which definitely brought us closer to the brink of all-out war with Iran than probably since the hostage crisis. He bombed Syria, which I remember with while there were Russian troops there, right? By the way,
and boots on the ground. Yeah.
And I remember when that happened, there was a beautiful clip with Bernie Sanders where Bernie was talking about why he didn't want a war in Syria. The reporter was like, "Okay, but it's not a war. We just did some airstrikes." Bernie, Bernie in a very characteristically Bernie-ish way is like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that you could just bomb someone. It wasn't a war. I thought that was a war.
Pardon me, excuse me." Yeah. I remember when Turkey shot down a Russian plane. And it's just like, this is getting pretty intense, man. And the fact that they're just salivating for more, I think
that was a plane that, at least according to the Turks, was on their territory. That was it's disputed, but it's like there was a plausible defense there, as opposed to going into a country where Russia is already at war and declaring a policy of shooting down all the Russian planes over that country, which is just amazing.
Amazing. I sometimes forget. Sometimes all of my exposure to, Beltway media is through the prism of LeftTube, right? Is everybody reacting to it? And it's easy because I get so much of my information from independent media. Hey, it's Drew. I get so much information from independent media. I am that myself. That when you hear the NatSec ghouls, come out to play. It's just like, man, like what are those? What's the silo that they live in? Like, what the hell is that even like? You know what I mean? Just rolling in think tank money, Oh man,
Yeah.
Danny was cutting it up last night for when you were on Bad Takes with Andy and I last night. Danny's hilarious.
Yeah. So I should say last night I was on. So Joe Payne, who is our guest here, we never introduced him, is among other things, he is the co-host of a movie podcast called Bad Takes, along with our own graphic designer J. Andrew World, and I was on there last night to talk about. You want to tell them what movie you made me watch?
God's Not Dead, the Kevin Sorbo masterpiece. I think we boiled it, by the end of it, we boiled it down to evangelical apologist murder porn. Like, where they, the atheist professor who's just completely over the top and overblown is like, killed by the end of it, just like a real sacrifice in order for him to, have a deathbed confession, which we're talking about Christopher Hitchens tonight. That's a topic we could discuss with Christopher Hitchens that I find very interesting.
That's good. We, because like earlier we wouldn't have had a natural transition because we were just talking about people being war crazy. So,
you could transition to Hitchens with that a little bit, I guess, but
but no, this takes us to the subject we're talking about Hitchens for, which is religion. So God's Not Dead is a wild movie. It is hard to describe, but I will just say it is a movie about an evil philosophy professor who forces all of his students to write down God is not dead on a piece of paper and turn it into God is dead on a piece of paper and turn it into them at the first day of class. And then there's the one Christian student like Maureen Todd in the old Shane emails who refuses to do it. And he tells the student while telling him he will fail, that like, I assure you, you will fail, and you'll fail the class, that he has to, since he refuses to write down God is dead, he will have to do a debate with the professor in class about the existence of God.
You must prove the antithesis, sir. Yeah, he challenged him.
Antithesis, yeah.
It was something else, and it really does. It really is the best they had, the best kind of response that the right wing evangelicals had to like new atheism. That was like the best they could come up with, and that they're not sending their best, folks. I hate to say it, but Kevin Sorbo not sending their best.
Yeah, and I mean to go ahead and continue to spoil the plot of a evangelical film from 2014. At the end, when Kevin Sorbo's character is hit by a car, so he can have his deathbed conversion on the street, that everything's been setting up. It's like cutting between that and this Newsboys concert, Christian rock concert. So it really feels like everybody celebrated the concert and celebrated Kevin Sorbo dying.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, the whole thing was leading up to that. The whole damn thing was just leading up to killing it's God's wrath meted out on the dirty atheist, and the left wing blogger gets cancer. It's just like
at her blog New Left, where she does stuff like do interviews with the Duck Dynasty guy, where she's like, but isn't it bad that you kill ducks? And also, you pray to Jesus, sir. That would offend people.
That's offensive. Yeah. And then he gives a whole screed about living just a simple country life and flags flapping in the background and everything. It's quite something from a propaganda standpoint. But our show's about bad movies, bad takes. So if y'all want to check that out on YouTube, I'd appreciate. Andy and I would love the subs. Bad Takes podcast with Joe and Andy. But
I should. And that was definitely a reaction to. That was definitely a reaction to the New Atheist. There's actually a point in the movie where one of the students, like it's basically the only time one of the other students in the class intervenes, to ask the Marine Todd student, why. But Richard Dawkins says in his book, The God Delusion, and give him the Dawkins argument so he can respond to it. This is 2014. This stuff was still live.
Absolutely. And something I didn't get to say last night was how little we heard from any of his fellow students. Like, there's never really a scene of him having a conversation other than the character who's a stand-in for communist China, who's like, there's a lot of like creepy racial undertones regarding Arabs and Chinese and communism and all this stuff in this movie.
Basically, the two students we get are the Chinese student who's there so he could be on the phone with his communist, although I'm sure he's like a finance company CEO or something.
Guy's wearing a business suit, yeah.
So he could talk to his Chinese communist father on the phone and be like, "Do you remember that woman who let the secret Christians, do the prayer meeting in your house?" And
we'll talk about that. Yeah.
The other one is the Muslim girl who the big plot twist is that she's secretly listening to Franklin Graham's podcast and is a believing Christian.
Well, Ben, she was not a student. I have to correct you on this.
Okay.
She was not enough shades pale to be a student. She was actually in the film was staff in the cafeteria in God's Not Dead. So you got to be clear. They had her.
Oh no, that's right. Okay,
she was a little too dark complected to be actually going to the university.
That's right. For some reason, I thought she was a student, and then because her dad is dropping her off and picking her up. But of course, right, she's not a student; she's just cafeteria staff. Because at the end, there's a strong implication because the Marine Todd's Christian, but not quite Christian enough girlfriend has dumped him for being willing to take this brave stand in defense of his faith. And there's the strong implication at the end that this is his next girlfriend, that they...
Yeah, maybe. But there's just that scene when we see her in the cafeteria, she's just like listening to him, like, as he's explaining, like, well, I believe in Jesus, and he it really is almost like, we were joking around about Chick Tracks too, but it's almost like a character in Chick Tracks who's just like doe-eyed and listening to the Christian preach, it's like... layers, man. That is a Christian nationalist onion that you can peel away from, peel layer after layer off of.
And by the way, DPRK comrade, mostly classic rock, some blues. I was actually, when we came on StreamYard before we started, I'd been listening to the Longest Johns. I still have the Weller Man stuck in my head from like a year ago, and I don't, what was it listening to after that? The Poor Man's Poison, which is when you came in, you were like, oh, that's a mandolin in the background.
Yeah, I play mandolin and piano and other instruments, so I heard that. I was like, ooh, what's that? There's only so many good mandolin players out there.
Fair enough. Well, let's talk about the other side of the argument from Kevin Sorbo. Well, I mean, Kevin Sorbo's character side of the argument, but the other side of the argument from the Kevin Sorbo movie.
Yeah. At one point, remember, he jammed in all like the subtitles of like 3 New Atheist books into like like one sentence or two. Like, it was pretty funny.
Because religion poisons everything, and it's a delusion.
It's a delusion. Yeah, exactly. It was.
And that's my letter to your Christian nation.
Boom, got it. So it was. That was the funny thing, is it was the Christian depiction of, because this is part of why you're having me on tonight to talk about Christopher Hitchens. This is part of why I was super excited, by the way, for your book that I have right here. Is I spent a lot of time in New Atheism, kind of mired in my 20s in Hitchens and Dawkins and Sam Harris videos, and it was really like I literally found Michael Brooks by searching Sam Harris criticism in YouTube. And up came him and Sam Cedar talking about criticizing Sam Harris. And it like really pulled me out of that world and realizing there's no politics there. And it's an anti-left politics.
Mm-hmm.
And, it helped me look at Hitchens. But that's what I loved about that's where I found you, of course, was after Michael started his show. And you two would talk about Hitchens and just be real about him and his shortcomings, his failings later in life, as he turned away. He walked away, #walked away from Marxism and socialism. So I'm excited to look at this, because this is where these are all clips that I remembered as being really funny, for just like because there isn't much politics to the new atheism, but you can make theocrats like Sean Hannity or whoever else look kind of stupid, and that's fun for a laugh, I guess.
No, exactly. Which is kind of funny. So the debate we had been going to do tonight was Sohrab Ahmari, who actually is somebody who, if you're way too online, is a name you might have seen in the last couple of days, because he's one of the 3 co-founders of a magazine called Compact that just came out, and people have been arguing about, and whatever. I wrote a Jacobin article about it, but he is the conservative's conservative. He did this debate with another much more moderate conservative named David French, originally at that point for the National Review. I think now it's just like Substack or whatever. But and their debate was essentially like, this is a little bit uncharitable, but just a little bit, essentially about Sohrab's contention that French is too is too weak to like come out and endorse theocracy, because it was Sohrab was really pissed off about Drag Queen Story Hour being allowed at the public library, and he thought he think these like moderate conservatives like David French aren't willing to use the power of the state to stop such abominations from happening, from drag queens, reading to children.
We're seeing what kind of utility that those type of arguments have, right now. So it's old habits die hard, or I guess you dust off the old tools in your shed, especially when you don't hold all the everything in office. So
yeah, exactly. So I think a lot of it is very reminiscent of like the 80s Falwell, Roberts and stuff, but in any case, we're putting that off since Sam Adler Bell from Know Your Enemy wants to come on and join. Yep, great show.
Yeah.
He wants to come on and talk about that one with us. So we're going to do it in maybe a week or two with him and Matt McManus. But Joe had this excellent idea that for probably a little bit more of a short and sweet breakdown tonight, we could go back and watch some of Christopher Hitchens's God Is Not Great era appearances on YouTube. Not on YouTube, on Fox News, right?
Fox.
That they have, Fox. Because this is, to an extent, it's a little bit hard to remember, like how much the culture war, and I'm using that term very deliberately because, like, this is what this is your point about there's no politics, right? I mean, this is like what. This is sort of what people do almost instead of politics, or, they're doing it as very linked to politics, but it's not quite the same thing. Like this is what the culture war was really about in the late 2000s, like to an extent that's like really hard to remember. I mean, like even in terms of like actual political war, like it was definitely a lot of that was really driven by these kinds of culture war concerns, that like George W. Bush won re-election as much as anything by whipping up the faithful, evangelicals and right-wing Catholics about the possibility of boys kissing. And I mean, I'm old. I remember 2004. That's what happened.
That's what happened. It's crazy, and I guess like because this is when I kind of came to political awareness. Like I was in high school for 2004. I graduated in 07, and I just remember like that's part of was the appeal of new atheism, at least to me, was that it did seem like it was some kind of politics because Bush and his ilk were so like aggressively Christian and religious, right? And the axis of evil, and using very religious coded language to to sell the war and all this other stuff that was going on. The security state, the authoritarian the militarization of police, just everything that was happening at that time. And so if you were just, but that is a type of that I look back like, a reaction in our way that the left does, where we're not going to, again, have our positive vision of the world. We're going to have a reaction and negation of what their vision is. And so,
exactly.
in that respect, I remember the Christian kids on my campus being super like, about it. And I remember having arguments like these kind of things on campus. It's funny.
Yeah.
That's who it is.
Nope.
Gutfeld.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you, so I want to build up to the I want to build up to the super classic Hannity and Combs one.
Yeah.
But let's start with Greg Gutfeld, and I feel like this guy was a bigger thing back then. So you want to kind of remind us of who he is?
I guess I don't know. I guess he's supposed to be Fox's the funny one, right?
Yeah.
And I guess even back then, it was like, here's Fox's funny guy on the red eye. It was almost like he had a Zoo Crew kind of radio feel.
Yeah, exactly.
He was the funny guy who's saying these, well, and you can see he actually has a bit of a sense of humor about when Hitchens insults him. So he can, I give him credit for being able to roll with some of, Hitchens's taunts here and there better than, like Sean Hannity is going to go like, oh God, and just be so broadcast his offense. But this is the late show. So Gutfeld's being a little more, he's probably a drink and a half in, you know what I mean? Like he's having
sure.
Having a good, not as much as Hitchens, of course, but
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is, I remember Red Eye when they started that, and I remember kind of thinking, perhaps a little uncharitably, oh my God, they're trying to do the Daily Show for Fox. It's awful.
Oh, that was the half-hour news hour. You remember that one?
Oh, that's right. That was the half-hour news hour. I might be conflating the two. Yeah,
it was all the same attempt. It was all the same thing. Don't get me.
Yeah. Red Eye was a little bit more. Yeah, like you said, kind of radio Zoo Crew.
Dennis Miller too, a little bit of the Dennis Miller vibe, like for Fox, we're hanging out. There's some low lighting. We have a black backdrop, and I'm gonna be. This is the risque. This is all the 60 through 70 through 80, 90 have gone to sleep. This is the late 50s crowd is still up,
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's give this one a watch.
Yeah, let's hear him.
My next guest wrestles with God. Not literally. Well, actually, literally. In his latest book, it's called God is Not Great, How Religion Poisons Everything. And here to talk about it is author and journalist Christopher Hitchens. Mr. Hitchens, why do you hate our Lord Jesus Christ so much?
Well, I can't hate anyone in whose existence I don't really believe, but one reason I do dislike him, and
isn't it funny that that was the big thing that the character in God's Not Dead gets the logic professor with us? How can you believe it? So how can you hate something you don't believe? And his response is, well, that would be silly, right? And that's like the whole linchpin of the whole movie. Anyway, sorry, I won't.
No, that's absolutely right. Like, because in God is Not Dead, that was treated. Oh, they got him right. That's why do you hate God? No, why do you hate God? Why do you hate God? It's like, oh, damn it, I hate God because my mom died. And, that's...
He took everything from me. Yeah, that whole thing. And Hitchens just shrugs it off like he just got hit with a handful of feathers or something.
It's like, well, obviously, I don't hate someone I don't believe. Which
that would be absurd.
Is 110% how the whatever the professor's name was, but how that guy would actually respond, right? I mean, like that's the idea that how do you hate God is going to be the question. Why do you hate God is going to be the question that gets him to break down. It's just amazing. But anyway,
the ghastly aging intolerant virgin who you just showed live from Brazil is he said that he eschewed the birth canal, or rather, perhaps I put it another way. Use the birth canal only as a one-way street. This is a thing that almost all religions have in common. There's something they hate about the genitalia, especially the female. I don't share this view.
Well, that's That's a good point. But the thing is, if you hate religion because of it's the worst followers, it's like hating alcohol because there are drunks.
No, it's not because of the worst followers. It's because the texts themselves say what they say. They say, take no thought for the morrow, for example, if it's the New Testament. Forget everything, leave your family, abandon your friends, just follow me because the world is coming to an end really soon and nothing else matters. That's not moral instruction. If it's the Old Testament, they say, as long as you can kill every other member of every other tribe, leaving only the virgin females of the other team as captives for purposes unstated, then you'll get to the promised land. That's not moral teaching either. You don't need to be an extremist or a fundamentalist to say, well, that is what the religion actually says. Islam says, not the Quran itself.
I like, by the way, that while there's a chat on the screen over it, it looks like all it says under Hitchens is an atheist.
Red eye, an atheist. Yeah. I mean, Hitchens does look kind of red eyed in this one. Like he's obviously, it's been
Red-eyed atheist drunk, Christopher Hitchens.
Yes, yeah. Which I don't want to speculate. Who knows? Poor guy.
Yeah, I mean, he is probably a little, or at least severely hungover. I mean, realistically, but yeah.
But the Hadith, equally respected, says someone tries to leave the religion, kill him. He's dead as an apostate. The fundamentalists have the original texts on their side. As long as these texts are respected, we're always in danger of a revival of the most poisonous, toxic, horrible stuff.
But Christopher, not all religions are relative. I mean, we don't. My mother doesn't fly planes into buildings. She just goes to church on Sunday.
Which church is that?
St. Gregory's, Catholic Church.
Well, so she thinks that. Right,
diplomatic.
And I'm sure if you asked her, she would not say that she thinks that the souls of unbaptized children go to limbo. She probably doesn't think that, does she? But she was told that it was true and forced to believe it for centuries when millions of grieving parents thought that I didn't get the kid baptized in time, it died so soon, now it's in limbo forever. The church told them this wicked thing. This Pope you just had on the screen only took that back 2 weekends ago. Said, actually, we don't think that anymore. How can they say it? It was a real place for millions of people. This is an evil, cruel teaching. By the way, having said that they got something so big, so wrong, you notice they're ready to be infallible all over again. Maybe she goes to St. Gregory's for the company. I have no idea.
I think she probably
does. Goes for the religion. She's going to a place that preaches wicked things. That same church says AIDS in Africa is, of course, very bad, but not as bad as condoms in Africa.
Right. Let's just get away from religion and let's talk about God. I believe in God because I figure if I'm wrong, I won't know. I'm kind of like hedging my bet.
I think it's I have to point out, I feel like Hitchens kind of pulled a punch there. Like he could have gone to the most easy retort, which would have been, well, if your mother gives to collection, then she's funding the legal defense of, pederasts and rapists, and torturers of children, as he said before. Like he could have gone for the harder hit there. And I just think it's funny. Somebody in the chat said, man, Gutfeld went and doxed his own mother, right? Right there for that.
Says the name of the church she goes to and everything. Yeah,
exactly.
No, that's amazing. No, that's true. He could have brought up cardinal law there, but that would have been harsher and a little bit more in character. But it is also just amazing that, like, the way Gutfeld set it up. He says, well, not all religions are relative, which is a sloppy way of putting what he's trying to say, which is like, not all religions are equally bad, right? That's what he's trying to say. But
I noticed
it is a tellingly sloppy thing, because like people like Gutfeld do this all the time. They'll use like relative or relativism to mean exactly the opposite of what it means. Like if you say that, whatever, like the invasion of Iraq was similar to the invasion of Ukraine, there's like, oh, that's relativism. It's like, no, that's exactly the opposite of relativism. I'm applying consistent standards, but so it's a telling mistake. But what he means is they're not all equally bad. But then his way of saying it is, well, my mother doesn't fly planes into buildings. It's like, you think all of the like Muslim grannies you find at like any given Friday night, in mosque, like you think they fly planes into buildings? Like, yeah, some Muslims have done, have committed atrocities in the name of Islam, but that is not a disanalogy between Islam and Catholicism.
Yeah, like, would you call that a false equivalence or just a kind of, I don't know, like it's definitely, I don't know, it's definitely just an uncharitable like way to try to argue against. I don't know, it does. We shouldn't keep bringing things back to God's not dead, but it really is like,
Okay.
it really is like they have this really racist, awful depiction of a Muslim and a man and his daughter, and it's like, well, yes, this religion's bad, and we agree we want to hate this religion with you, Christopher Hitchens. But hey, let's not like, not all religions. Hashtag not all religions. Come on. We're not. We're just justifying this brutal foreign policy, or cruise missiles in Israel, or or in Gaza Strip, fired by Israel. Like and so he literally comes up with the most innocent example he could consider, which is like his mother sitting in a Catholic church, somewhere on the East Coast.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, come on. What if you're, what about like, I mean, surely, I mean, you could have, in fact, look, there is a guy that they could have hired if they didn't want to if they wanted to make a different kind of statement, like when they hired Gutfeld. Like, you could have found some, like, probably a little bit Carlos Mencia-ishly hated, self-hated, kind of like, I don't know, like some like Jordanian American like comic to like do this exact thing. And it's like, look, his mom doesn't fly planes into buildings either. She goes to a nice mosque and like has, like does nice things. But yeah, there are Muslim fundamentalists who've committed terrible crimes, and whereas the Catholic Church, as we all know, has never done anything wrong.
Yeah, it's interesting because like I am fascinated by Fox News. I have been for a long time, and at this time, like there were people that they were comfortable doing that. Like today it's Candace Owens. Back in the day, it was like Patrice O'Neill, one of my favorite comics. Like they would bring Patrice O'Neill because he would go on Opie and Anthony, and they just kind of had this shallow view that he's going to say stuff against political correctness, which he totally would. But he was also, Patrice O'Neill was too much of a live wire where he'd just be like, listen, Sean Hannity, admit you're a racist. We all know it. Just be real about it, man. And like it would go off the rails for them. He was too volatile. They couldn't control him. At this time on Fox, like they didn't have I don't remember there being a token Arab or Muslim who would come on and say, yeah, we got to kill them all, or nuke that whole place or whatever. They were much more comfortable having, white guys discuss it, how evil Islam is, and then try to, make up the difference for Christianity.
Yeah, fair enough. All right.
Isn't that the way most people believe in God, is because they figure if they don't believe it and they're wrong, they're screwed. If they believe it and they're right, they win.
Pascal's wager.
That is what's known as Pascal's wager. Now, in my book, which you kindly featured, I restate the wager. I say, look, suppose I check out, and I've been wrong all along, and I'm suddenly in front of some chap who can sort of bar my way to the gates of paradise, where, of course, I want to go, because who wouldn't want to live for an eternity just praising God as if he was Kim Il-sung?
Mr.
Leave that to one side.
Christopher, we got to roll.
And he says, what the hell? And I say, look, you didn't give me enough evidence.
You got it.
Wouldn't he be nicer to me than if I'd been a hypocrite?
All right, that's good. That's where we got to end it, Mr. Hitchens. Thank you for being on the show.
All right. Very Bill Maher-esque music there at the end. Did you catch that too?
Yeah, that's true. This is
very real time.
It was. This is actually kind of funny because I just had. I actually just wrote an article for about Bill Maher for the Daily Beast.
Congrats on that. That was great.
Thank you. So it's called. Well, look, I obviously didn't write this headline. I've never used the word cringe as an adjective, and I never will. But I do stand by the sentiment. It's called Bill Maher didn't change. He's always been a cringe centrist, which I was actually talking about on David Feldman earlier, which is funny because Feldman used to be a writer on the Bill Maher show. But
whoa, interesting.
Yeah, which is what I always like So ever since I knew that, right, I always use that, like when I'm talking about Maher, and I'm like, Bill Maher, when he's really on his own, when he's doing like the opening monologues, it's a train wreck. He's like the least naturally talented comedian who's ever been that successful in comedy. But when he's doing the new rules, yeah, some of those new rules that my friend David Feldman wrote for him were funny.
There you go. That's not bad. That's not bad. I don't know if Gutfeld had writers here. I mean, what do you think?
I mean, he might. I mean, sure, he had writers on the show, but like, I think that interview seemed pretty unscripted.
He had.
I mean, if there were writers who were involved in preparing those questions, they were phoning it in.
It really. He just had like every single question was like a different defense. It almost reminded me of like a prop comic who reaches into a bag, to take out every new joke or whatever, every new gag. Like it really was. It was just very like, what about my mom? Is she evil too? Okay, no, that. What about I'm hedging my bets? How about that? And it was just like it was like for Hitchens, it was like T-ball. It was like a game of T-ball. And he's obviously like half dead, half asleep. Who knows how much the cancer is growing in his body at this point. I don't want to be mean, but like he's he doesn't look good. He's got
no, he does not. He does not look good in that interview. Like that is actually like I have seen a lot of Hitchens on YouTube. Just wrote that book about him. That is possibly the worst that I've seen him look like on TV. Like I'm not saying I've never seen him look that bad, but I don't think I've seen him look worse than that.
Quite a belabored. I've seen him look drunker and not nowhere near as bad. You know what I'm saying?
No, totally right. Like I've seen him look like sort of convivially drunk before, of course, right? I mean, there's tons of that, but like I've never seen him look as just like strung out as he does in that interview. Yeah. That is like a feat of heroism that like he made it through the interview. It's like, okay, let's do this.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah. Your mother, the Catholic Church.
Limbo. He's just counting the time to his next cigarette. You know what I mean? It's like at the back of his head the whole time. Yeah,
totally. Hitchens, and he still kicks his ass.
Exactly. That's Hitchens that is very tired and burnt out and just like, oh, God. Like I said, it was T-ball. It was just T-ball. It was a game of T-ball for him.
Totally, right? I mean, it's like Hitchens at his very worst and most strung out was still like, yeah, I mean, I don't, I mean, obviously, as somebody said in the chat, I mean, it's the great theologian Greg Gutfeld. So,
let's hear from
him. You're gonna get what you're gonna get there, more or less. But let's get okay. So we're gonna do the Hannity and Combs about Falwell last, but we do have a different Hannity clip here.
Yeah, there's two. There's so that we're still in the realm of him promoting God is not great.
Exactly.
Right. Yep. Yeah. And so now he's on Hannity. And I want people to pay attention to the amount of editing that, I mean, this obviously these YouTubers edited their own intro and whatnot, but the amount of editing that Hannity and Fox obviously did to this interview. So they were chopping it up quite a bit, Can't let too much of that through. Oh my gosh, I hadn't even graduated high school yet. I was about to graduate in a month.
Oh.
This is like Star Wars. Christopher Hitchens.
Yeah, I should say, by the way, what I was going to say about Bill Maher, something I mentioned in the article that I think really more than anything shows like what a strange, sad, empty vessel Bill Maher is that I don't know if you remember this. Well, okay, let's start a step back. You remember Milo Yiannopoulos?
Yeah, thank you for reminding me. Yeah.
Yes. So just before Milo's fall from grace, right? He'd already been kicked off Twitter, but he was still running pretty high, in every other way.
Wait, isn't this the far right guy? Like the far right that's been telling us that teachers are grooming children and trans people for pedophilia? You're talking about the far right white nationalist guy, Milo Yiannopoulos, who was arguing for like pro pedophilia stuff on Joe Rogan's podcast.
Well,
just so we're clear.
I don't. So
That's what
yeah.
canceled him finally.
Yeah, because I don't think it was anything he said on Rogan, but it was definitely about that subject, right? So it was, maybe it was Rogan, but I think it was some like old recording of him had like somehow come to light where I don't remember all the details.
I remember at least one of them was a clip from Rogan, but then Bill Maher took like all the credit, right? Remember that?
Yeah, well, so this is the thing, right? Because this is just before Milo is finally like effectively deplatformed. When he's finally effectively deplatformed, it's when he's deplatformed by the right. Because like,
yes,
I mean, attempts by leftists to deplatform him like pretty much built his career, right? That was that was the Dangerous Ideas tour that he did on college campuses. Exactly, that's his business model. People are going to try to deplatform him. And the corporate deplatforming with Twitter, I mean, like I'm sure that was a real blow, but he was still running pretty high. But he went up Bill Maher after that, and then during that Bill Maher appearance, which was just before he was deplatformed by the right because the pedophilia comments came out, or whatever, age of consent. I was molested by a priest who was actually good, whatever he said, So,
honey, I was the predator. That's what he said. Dude. Okay.
I know, right? So it was like just before that happened. He was on Bill Maher, and Maher, who keep in mind, Bill Maher had Hitchens on that show many times, right?
Yes, yes, he did. Yeah, on Politically Incorrect as well.
Yep, and like I mean I still remember some of those like New Atheism era Hitchens appearances on Real Time where it's like he's like that was the show he could like he didn't have to hide his scotch in a coffee cup, he could just like bring it out, It's like,
that's true.
And some, but like during that interview with Milo Yiannopoulos on Real Time, Bill Maher said, "You remind me of a young, gay, alive Christopher Hitchens." It's like, okay. What you're telling me is you didn't get anything out of all of those sit downs with Christopher Hitchens other than the fact that he has a fancy accent?
I think so, man. I really think like Bill Maher, he's a bit of a goldfish brain in a way. It's like the same thing that compels him every time like somebody, I don't know, below the age of 50 with a pulse like sits in front of him. He goes, maybe you should run for president. He just like thinks he's very easily, you just have to, jingle some keys in front of his face and he'll get very excited. And like that I'd been annoyed with Bill Maher for a long time before that, but I always thought, whatever, at least there's somebody saying something, in that direction. And then I heard that and I was just like, man, wow, money is a hell of a drug, or whatever it is that's doing this to him. I mean,
I don't even know if it's money or if it's just that he's just kind of a dim bulb, but
easily impressed. I think that's the way to put it.
And yes, that is, as Joe reminds us, we did a segment about this. So even with Bill Maher, who I just wrote an article bashing, like I did just now, I did the thing where I resist a little bit the move because I think we're too quick to make it where everybody's a grifter. Milo is 100% a grifter. Like he's like actually like, again, that word is so wildly overused. Like everybody disagrees with this grifter, but like Milo is a full-on 19th century going from town to town selling monorails grifter.
I was literally just about to say something like he would have a suitcase with a different like, in this town he's a carnival barker. In this town he's like a snake oil salesman. Yeah, I was literally about to make that same comparison because he is. If you can't call Milo Yiannopoulos a grifter, then there's no thing as well.
No, exactly. He is. Yeah. He is one thing, and the way you can tell, like, more than anything, is like, look, his whole shtick before the Age of Consent comments came out was that he was like the wild, Trumpy, like sort of like creepily far right, but also very like libertine, very like he would talk about how he loved to suck black cock and stuff like that, he was that guy, right? And then after the right canceled him, it's so obvious that he just like, there was a meeting if he still has a couple people he could do a meeting with, and they had like a bulletin board with like
the flow chart. So you've been
here are all of the different places he could still go, like what audience will still have him. And what they settled on was the religious right. You know, that he.
There's only one trap door for that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, well, that's it, right? Because it's like, okay, what do? Let's see, can you become like a never Trump MSNBC kind of guy? No, I don't think that's a live option, right? You know, it's got to be Jesus. And so he gave this interview where he claimed, he admitted that he was still living with his husband, but he claimed that they were just roommates now. And he said that because, you know, he'd found Jesus and he was no longer gay, I swear I'm not making this up, dogs no longer barked at him.
Oh my God. Wow. God, and people say Marianne Williamson is out there, like with some of the things she said. Like that is that's really out there. Like I kind of enjoy that the right will just cling to whoever comes by, you know what I mean, and embrace them. And then like when this happened, they were, you know, quick to shove them off. And that is really the only trapdoor, like for you as a far right person, is saved by Jesus. One of my favorite is that the far right evangelicals embrace was I'm a bit of a true crime buff, as Jeffrey Dahmer, because Jeffrey Dahmer would say all this stuff about, well, I believed in evolution, and so these people were all just meat to me, and you know, I didn't understand that what I was doing was whatever, harming their eternal souls, and I didn't know they even had those. And so, you know, or Ted Bundy said pornography led him to, you know, brutally eat and kill and eat and people and women. And the far right is just like, you see, listen to this psychopath. Like, you know,
definitely Ted Bundy is the analyst you should be listening to on this.
Absolutely. They know we can trust them. You know, I mean, talk about discernment. Not, you know, it's one thing to read the Bible and be like, where we keep delaying this clip. So
yeah, let's do it.
And welcome back to Hannity's America. Author and journalist Christopher Hitchens is no stranger to controversy. In this week's Hot Seat, I go head-to-head with him over his brand new book, God is Not Great. You describe yourself as a devout anti-theist, and you're an atheist. Explain.
Okay, well, an atheist is someone who doesn't believe that there is a God, or at least says that there's no evidence to believe that there is. But such a person might very well say he wished it was true. In fact, I know some atheists who do say, well, I wish I could believe it, I just can't. There's not enough evidence for it. All the evidence is the other way. I see that. I say I'm an anti-theist because I think it would be rather awful if it was true. If there was a permanent, total, round-the-clock, divine supervision and invigilation of everything you did, you would never have a waking or sleeping moment where you weren't being watched and controlled and supervised by some celestial entity from the moment of conception till, well, not even till your death, because it's only after death that the real fun begins, isn't it? It would be like living in North Korea.
To be an atheist, you have to believe that it is possible, which I think is a far greater leap of faith. That's something that can be created out of nothing. When you look at the majesty and sophistication and the intricacy of the universe that we do know and comprehend, you have to believe that somehow that this energy could have existed on its own, and I do not believe that to me is a leap of faith.
You give me the awful impression, I hate to have to say it, of someone who hasn't read any of the arguments against your position ever.
I've read all the arguments.
I don't see how you can be saying this. Look, you want your God to take responsibility for the huge number of collapsing stars and imploding galaxies and destroyed universes and failed solar systems that have left us in this tiny corner on the one planet in this petty solar system that can support life some of the time on some of its surface. And you want a creator who's filled this earth with species since life began, 99% of which are now extinct already. And this is some design, isn't it?
Well,
but you got it. But you didn't say that. You said you were a believer. You didn't say you were a theist.
I am a believer. I believe in a creator.
Right, yeah, well, that's where it stops, or you think this creator cares about you too?
No, in this concept that I will concede this point is that human beings, I don't think, fully comprehend or understand the majesty of God because it's not meant for us to know. But putting that aside here, from your position, when you really think about it, you are believing that there is a possibility without a creator that somehow energy has created itself, or that energy predates or any concept of time, and energy that for example, something that can come out of nothing, because fundamentally there has to be that starting point, or you're saying, or confirming that
Hitchens is so unimpressed.
That is what our minds demand. We look for patterns.
You seem to be angry with religion,
hard
angry
cut.
with God. Am I wrong in my perception?
That was a hard cut right there. You're still muted, Ben.
That is awesome that Gutfeld and Hannity both go straight to why do you hate God?
Yeah. It's just like,
God, you seem to be angry at religion. You know, like this is their one move.
They can't even compare notes like within the same damn network. You know, it's like, wait, geez, man.
Yeah, I will also say, I mean, I will, you know, in the in the interest of calling balls and strikes here, I will say that Hitchens missed a trick here, because I think that you know, what he should have done with that thing about, you think energy creates itself, you know, matter creates itself, you know, you're like, okay, but like, why? I mean, like the obvious answer is what's the you know, which did come up in God is not great, is God is not dead, but I'm gonna say they did not explain this well there in that movie, but in that, like, okay, sure, but what's the difference in principle between saying that, you know, the universe exists uncreated, or the Big Bang singularity exists uncreated, and God exists uncreated? Like why is
that was always the argument I found most compelling is somebody, you know, if somebody says to me, well, something had to create that creation. Okay, well then something had to create your God. No. Okay, I'm like, well, special pleading. I don't have time for that. So it's all right, you know. Like I think what is it, the Babadook created or whatever, you know, and nothing could create a Babadook, or you know, or it could be what's the famous Turtles All the Way Down.
Well, in God is not dead. God's not dead. The way that Maureen Todd handled it was to say that well, that question, you know, what created God, only makes sense if you imagine God that's been created. And it's like, well, I mean, that doesn't answer anything. Like, we can play that game. I mean, like, what created the universe is only a question if you imagine a universe that's been created. I mean, what's the you know, what's the disanalogy here?
That's totally circular.
Man. It's ridiculously circular. And all right, I'll stop complaining about God's not dead, but I will.
It weighs heavy on this.
Yeah, anybody who's watching this when we clip just this part later and has no idea what I'm talking about. I was on Joe's podcast. We talked about that movie, God's Not Dead. But, but like, yeah, the whole point is, you know, they were sort of treating the fact that like the question like cuts both ways as if that, you know, like that were a win for them. But it's like, no, the whole point is that it cuts both ways. So, you know, this isn't an argument for the existence of God, right? Yes, like there's nothing about considering this that, you know, makes it more likely that God exists than not. So anyway,
exactly, yeah. Let's keep it going.
Not with God, obviously, that would be absurd. But yes, I mean, my book expresses, I would rather say, contempt and hostility to this constant religious intimidation and clerical bullying to which we're being subjected. My book is part of an attempt to arrange and organize a pushback against this, whether it's the parties of God destroying Iraqi civil society, or bigots in America trying to have pseudoscience taught in our schools, or a pope who says that AIDS may be bad, and limbo, by the way, may have been a mistake, but let's talk about hell. And anyway, AIDS isn't as bad as condoms. We had enough of people who think, like you, that they know what God wants and that they've got God on their side.
Well, I hope you're not comparing.
They can tell us to do it. They can tell us. Well, they can tell us what to do or what to think in this way.
I don't care.
Yes, I am very.
There is hostility here, but I will tell you this: you are right, and I agree with actually many of the observations you made about how religion has been perverted and how it is being used for destruction and how it has been unproductive.
It is innately irrational.
Well, I disagree with that. That's a certain intellectual snobbiness perhaps on your part, but let me just say this. But religion
that could well be right.
Religion also has provided food and water and medicine and supplies and housing, and there has been, in the name of religion, much good that has been done, both in this country and around the world.
But if you reduce religion to social work, well, so does USAID do all that. Actually, a secular organization, actually rather more convincingly. Most of the great philanthropists of the United States have been atheists. It doesn't prove that atheism is correct.
There is a God.
He had so little time left in his segment. That's all he could throw in at the end was, "There's a God. There totally is, everybody."
Yeah.
Jesus, that's incredible. I do enjoy the utility. I mean, that at least like you had somebody who got to get on Fox News and draw a line between, extremism in the Middle East to, people,
Right.
People in the classroom here, bigots in our classrooms and all that stuff. And Hannity didn't like that. He didn't like that.
No, he didn't. I mean, like, on the one hand, like, I'm not crazy about an aspect of what Hitchens is doing there, because I think that I think that part of his move is to blame the disastrous aftermath of the invasion he supported on like religion, right? As like a general phenomenon.
All this religion here, it was all the religion over here that was the problem. I hear you.
Yeah, exactly. But on the other hand, I mean, look, he's not wrong to say that if you're if you find, I mean, the actions themselves objectionable and people doing it in the name of God objectionable, etc., that there is some kind of line to be drawn between that and American fundamentalists who aren't doing anything as bad as that, but like are doing a lot of objectionable things in the name of religion, especially back then. I mean, this is the era when the kind of last stand of the attempt to teach creationism in schools was going on.
Yeah, intelligent design. Yeah,
with the crusade to stop gay people from like getting married and living and living like monogamous lives and having families and getting to visit each other in the hospital and other such threats to civilization was going on.
Yeah, and Hitchens would share airtime with like imperialist simps like what's his name, the guy who argued gay British man who argued for his the right to marry, and it was like cited. I can't. Andrew Sullivan. Yes, thank you. Yeah. And like but Andrew Sullivan was like, "Can I please have my rights? But yes, we should totally invade Iraq and bomb Palestinians. But please, can we have our rights?" That was like the frame at the time, and it's interesting to see this because on Fox, like Hitchens would serve this dual purpose. He was a double-edged sword for them, right? Where he could come in and be the super smart sounding British guy who will tell you why the war in Iraq is justified and why Bush is doing the right thing. But then he could also be the snooty, smug, as Hannity called him, British guy who is, shitting on these good God-fearing people, these damn elitist intellectuals, Marxists.
Yeah.
That's when he was a Marxist again,
Yeah, totally. That is a really good point. I will say with Sullivan, it is funny because even though Hitchens and Sullivan would agree on both Iraq and gay rights, there is a clip that you can find on C-SPAN. There was actually a TMBS segment about this a few years ago, where Sullivan and Hitchens are on C-SPAN together, and it's like 2002. They're both promoting the upcoming war in Iraq. But there's this caller. It's like it's some kind of Asian accent. I'm not sure, but the caller says, "Well, I hear what you're saying. That Saddam Hussein has violated all these UN resolutions, but hasn't Israel violated a bunch of UN resolutions?" And
I remember that one. Yeah,
doesn't there seem to be a bit of a double standard here? And there is this really interesting thing that happens because Hitchens, 2002 Hitchens is like, "Yeah, you're totally right. We should we should get Israel to stop violating all, like all these UN resolutions. That totally is undermining American credibility. And of course, since he's already, gone the direction he's gone, I mean, ultimately his argument is like it, undermines our credibility while we're, promoting the liberation of Iraq, but it is still interesting. He says it, and then Sullivan does not like that one bit.
Into a lather. He goes into a lather, just like about, how dare you? I think he. Drew mentioned one of his favorite hit slaps is in the video we just watched, where he goes, "You give me the. I hate to have to say it, but you give me the feeling of someone who's never read any of the arguments against your position ever." He says something to that. I remember you and Michael laughing about it, where he was trying to say in some way Hamas has a right to resist because they're under occupation. And then, Sullivan just is beside himself. And he says something like, well, I was trying to make I was trying to make them more than, I was trying to go past the obvious point, Andrew, almost try to keep up. That one was pretty good. I can't remember fully.
Yeah, right. But it was really interesting because Sullivan had the kind of reaction. Actually, a clip I don't think we're going to get to tonight. I think we'll just stick to the religion ones. But one of the clips he sent me was when Hitchens is on Laura Ingraham, and she is mad at him. This is 2008. Yes. She's mad at him because he endorsed Obama.
Exactly.
And she basically is like, oh, but I thought you were a crazy warmonger like us, why are you supporting this guy who, who's mildly critical of some of the worst things that Bush did, that is a huge betrayal. And it's kind of in the same energy as that Sullivan is okay, I like you when you're, slavering for blood in the war on terror, but why? What's going on? Why aren't you willing to just say also the Palestinians need to be crushed? And Hitchens, to his credit, is no. I mean, look, at a certain point, no matter what evolution he's gone through, buy the book for more on that. But no matter what evolution he's gone through, he just knows too much about the world and he's still too intellectually honest to like let that slide. He's like, no, come on. Clearly there is a moral and political difference between fundamentalists, like sending planes into buildings and, murdering thousands of office workers and Palestinians who, even if sometimes what they do, like some of the individual tactics might be wrong, but like overall, like are in fact fighting a war against a really brutal occupation of their land.
Yeah, he had deep roots. He had deep roots on that subject, and it was almost like you couldn't, you couldn't. He was reverting back to, a long-held position. I think another thing Michael Brooks said that like I think about a lot is he was talking about Bernie and Biden, and he was saying these guys are old. They're gonna revert back to type. How have they been? What have been their motivations and their habits across their whole life, and especially when you have a somebody in public service like that's, you can tell a lot by what they might do by what they have done, just because, especially in our gerontocracy, right? That they're definitely like just reverting to their habits. And so with Hitchens, it was like he's got this old bone in his body for that's anti-colonial, knows his history, and I think Ingraham is like, you're so smart on everything else. You're so smart on the war, Christopher, or you're so smart, and that's not condescending. It's just true. But she's mad that he, because and people want to say that Hitchens never would have supported Hillary Clinton in 2016. But there's there's interviews where he said like, he's like, if Miss Clinton said enough, angry things toward Islam, I would be happy. I might hold my nose, but I would, vote.
Yeah, I think he most likely. I think at the outside of like the realm of like at the edge of the realm of possibility, he might have done like what he did in the 2000 election and just done like pox on both their houses in 2016.
Yeah, sure.
You know, but like the one thing I'm certain of is there's no version of Hitchens that would have ever supported Trump for many reasons.
I think he saw Trump for what he was in a lot of ways. I mean, he used the F word as well. You know what I mean? So no, he did. I mean, like, if anything, I actually think that Hitchens. I think Hitchens sometimes, like, I think what was wrong with Hitchens at this point was kind of the opposite of what would have had to be wrong with him from to have supported Trump. You know, that like because he had because like I think if anything, I think Hitchens fell into the same thing that like some sort of resistance lib types have fallen into in the last several years, which is that like you sort of you sort of see. You know, you sort of live in an eternal 1939, right? You know, they're always fascists at the gate, you know, and so, you know, because yeah, I think he had like that sort of the kind of like moral weight of World War II, the struggle against fascism and everything was like always on his mind, which is not a bad thing. But I also think he saw a lot of false positives, you know, and so I think that there's a, you know, so I think, you know, one way or the other, I don't think he would have liked Trump, like actually, like especially. For many reasons, right? I mean, Trump was actually like bringing back the Lindbergh slogan, "America First," you know, like that. There's no, you know, like, and I mean, and God, I mean, people have heard me say this before, but I mean, you go back and look at like what Hitchens wrote about that Glenn Beck rally in 2009. I think he called it the water world of white self-pity. Oh my God, I haven't read that. That sounds great.
Yeah, I mean, he would have 100% been anti-Trump. I think it's an interesting question whether he, you know, would have supported, despite their foreign policy differences, would have supported Bernie in the primary. It's possible, but it's and it's possible he could have sat out the general, or it's possible he could have supported Hillary. But I think those are the two possibilities.
I got a question for you. To connect two of these things, how much do you think? So you mentioned like resistance libs. What did you just say about resistance libs feeling like it's 1939 and perpetual fascist noise at the gate? Yeah. How much of that is like the actual utility and political power that there was in that at that moment? From because you could get a lot of the identity politics, whatever, type of liberals upset at Trump just when he ever opened his mouth. But like, how do you get like, you know, blue, you know, I don't know, NatSec, you know what I mean? MSNBC used to be conservative. Now it's like, you know what I mean? Like all those people who want to hear from Clapper and, you know, all these goons, like there was a utility in it. How much of that was going on with Hitchens where he, you know, did he find like there was a political utility or do you think he was kind of joining in with Bush because he saw that there was power in it, that there was utility in those arguments and political power that was really making them? Or, you know, because sometimes you hear people accuse like, well, you know, so like, well, all these socialists become conservatives in their elder years because they're just tired of having no power and no say.
Yeah, I mean, I think that last part, there's some truth to. I mean, I think anytime, you know, I think if you could convince yourself that there's a way to, you know, and I mean, this is not even a dishonorable thing. I think if you could convince yourself that there's a way to exert actual influence in the world and you can convince yourself that's for the better, right? You know, then like that's going to be extremely tempted, right? But I also think, you know, again, I think that sort of like moral weight of World War II and struggle against fascism, I think that's a sincere thing. I think it's a sincere thing for lots of people who take it in directions that I view as somewhat misguided, right? I mean, so I mean, I think like ranging from stuff that you and I might even disagree about a little bit, right? I mean, I do not think that you know, I don't think there's any scenario by which we were plunged into the bloodthirsty raid of the Q shaman. You know, that they like I'm not worried about that. And to like Hitchens thinking that you know, like sort of telling himself that the war on terror was World War II because they're fighting, you know, Islamo-fascists or whatever.
Yeah. He bought the good versus evil. I think there's a really telling interview once where he talks about 9/11 And he says, I'm almost ashamed to admit it, but I was somewhat exhilarated, and like this was an enemy that he, that he was like, okay, let's, he, and I don't know. I just,
I
I
mean,
get
I think,
that.
yeah,
I get 9/11 was, I lived through it. So I get that
sure.
it was traumatic and meant a lot of things to a lot of people, but it, it makes, I don't know, to me, that approach to foreign policy is just like, it's a non-starter for me. So, it makes you wonder how to get there, and 9/11 surely.
Yeah, no, for sure. Right. Like, it's funny. I mean, we'll go to the next clip in a second, but I think that, because I remember, I remember 9/11. It was at the very, it was like the first month of my junior year of college. I'd like taken like a year off, like in between, right? And I had, I remember going to my logic class first thing in the morning, and somebody said, "Do you hear something about a plane in a building?" And then like nobody quite knew what was going on there. That was.
But then the professor said, "Hold on, I need you to write down on this piece of paper for me. God is dead." No, I'm just
then everybody's kind of distracted by the drama about that.
Yeah. The professor was gonna make you all write. God is
yeah,
Sorry,
it's like I don't have time to hear about planes and buildings. We need to, we need to do this. That's right. That's right. And then later in the day, I was at I was at philosophy and history double major undergrad. So I was at my Renaissance and Reformation history class. That's what that would have been that semester. And I remember sitting down and somebody asked, God, what was it? Who was the? So it was this girl across from me asked if like anybody was like a Tom Clancy fan, because there's like some Tom Clancy novel where like somebody flies a plane into the White House, and like by that time people knew that like something was going on, right? And so like I think the professor actually let us out to like go over to like the library where there was like a TV, and this is 2001, you can't just watch on your phone. And so I feel like it might have been a replay, but I feel like I was actually watching when the second plane, hit. But and then like I remember there were people, there were like people who were like spontaneously praying and stuff like that. It was intense. But I remember that night in the basement of my dorm watching TV and seeing Harold Kushner, I want to say, being interviewed on like, I don't know, CNN or whichever one it was, right? And him having this line about how we're all Israelis now, and I had this little moment where it clicked, right? Because I was already a leftist, right? So I was like, oh fuck, this is what this is going to be, right? And like in a weird way, I feel like I had like what Hitchens is describing as this sort of moment with like he perceived 9/11 as everything he loved coming into going to war with everything he hated.
Yeah.
Like in a weird way, like it wasn't that, right? But like 9/11 was this incredibly clarified moment for me, because it was like, oh shit, we are about to have basically everything that happened, and like this is going to be awful, and
very
like
bad.
Yeah, it's like, the next few years of my life are going to be about opposing all of this, and so it was, organizing the anti-war protests and all this stuff, so, in a weird,
those were some bleak times, man. Like I just remember just the like the tonal shift of like everything, you know what I mean? And and being just barely old enough to like register all of that stuff was like, was a trip. It's interesting you were talking about dating yourself with the TV, and I that clip we watched with Hannity, he had like regular TVs behind him instead of like the full wall monitors we have today. So I was like, well, yeah, it is interesting to time capsule yourself into some of this stuff, but
absolutely
real.
All right, let's okay, so
last
we
one.
have just let's do the last one. So this is going to be not Hannity is America, but this is going to be
Classic Hannity. And Combs.
Yeah,
There he is.
Yep, Hannity Cock. Let's do it. Let's see.
Someone's asking about your dog. Is that Lucy in the corner stretching out?
Oh,
so.
Is she?
Yeah, you can see her when we're on full frame. Yeah.
Yeah, that is. That is.
Maybe my cats will show up a little later
Yep,
than they did last
yep.
time. Yeah,
that is Lucy hanging out on her back as she does.
awesome.
So there you go. All right.
Was a polarizing figure, emboldening conservative Christians while alienating
You're
many.
talking about
liberals,
Reverend.
but there's no question about
pause
the
real quick?
impacting legacy.
Sorry.
Yeah.
The context is he had been on Anderson Cooper the day before and had just like called him. I mean, he did not hold back. He really didn't hold back. And so, this created a controversy that they had to have him on because how dare you say such a thing? I can't remember some of the things he said, but
yeah, no. Look, I mean, Christopher Hitchens was obviously not a fan of Reverend Gemstone, so this is it got rough at Anderson Cooper, and it's going to get even rougher here. Which actually, while I'm telling not super scintillating anecdotes about this stuff, I was just randomly remembering. So this is 2008, right?
Is that when Falwell died? I'll look it up really quick.
I think so. Yeah, Jamie, pull that up.
Okay. 2007.
2007, okay.
May of 2007. So this is right around the exact same time of the other clips.
Yes, this would have been like just after the other one. That's interesting. So I can remember, so I guess 2007, right? I started my PhD program in Miami in 2006. So I was, anyway, but I can remember being out at the Sunset Tavern, which is like an outdoor kind of bar in South Miami that grad students went to a lot, and on whatever flip phone I probably had in 2007,
a Razor.
Razor. I may have had a Razor. I remember texting a friend of mine who was actually at that point was like in like some Catholic seminary thing, that he was going to become a priest, and so sort of playfully asking him for moral advice as a future priest about whether I had to pretend to be sad that Jerry Falwell was dead.
Oh my gosh, what did he say?
No.
Not even I mean, you can't even try to pretend. It's this was just such a weird time. I mean, the Christian right really like they were dictating the conversation at this time. You know what I mean?
Yes, they were.
The war on terror was a big part of it, but there was also just like this like nationalism that was in the air. That, I mean, me and my hippie friends in high school met physical abuse from, like the kids who were the church going, kids of Republican parents and all that shit. It was like that. And so I don't know. Again, like there's not much politics to it, but just the fact of just upsetting. It reminds me of what is it? Megan Thee Stallion after WAP came out. She like kind of laughed at the end of the year. She's like, we had the Republicans in an uproar. It was great, and that's what this shit is good for. That's what Hitchens on Fox is good for. It's just like upsetting them. If it's gonna, get them like Yosemite Sam angry, whoa, I can't believe then I'm happy. That's all you're gonna get.
Well, it is funny because it's those two things, right? The like evangelical Christianity and the nationalism, that were driving it all. And I think for most people, right, my sense, I mean, I would actually be I mean, there's probably no good way to get data on this, but I would be fascinated to do like a poll where you ask people who are like, I don't know, whatever, like college or later in the late 2000s. Did you read God Is Not Great? Right. And like it, right? Like, did you read and like God Is Not Great? And how did you feel about the Iraq War? because my guess, I could be wrong about this, a lot of this is just driven by, anecdote, but my guess is that the majority of people who answer yes to the first question, that I read and liked God is Not Great in 2007, would have said, oh, I was like appalled by the Iraq War, right? As the answer to the second one, right? Because I think for most people, they were reacting to all of the George Bush shit, and it was all kind of bound up together for them.
Exactly, and that that's why it, like, the new atheism stuff had an allure of politics to it, but then as like Trump was happening, and still all anybody wants to talk about is how the left is out of control, and the left are the authoritarians, and it's just like the bullshit meter starts running out of batteries, I guess, at that point. But somebody said, can we talk about how awful Alan Combs was? Oh, we're about to see. I mean, this is some funny stuff.
Yeah, let's do it.
Legacy Falwell leaves behind. Joining us now is Republican strategist Ralph Reed and author of God is Not Great, columnist Christopher Hitchens, who made news last night with his harsh critique of the Reverend. Christopher, let me start with you here and talk about the things you've said, which obviously we know where you stand on religion. We know where you stand on Reverend Falwell. By being so angry about what his legacy was and is, are you not hurting his family and others who may have no dog in that hunt?
Why are you being so mean?
Just like a few moments to celebrate his life.
Yeah, what about the rest of the gemstones?
Well, I don't care whether his family's feelings are hurt or not. But if they are, they can take comfort from the extraordinary piety and stupidity and, generally speaking, uniformity of the coverage of the man's death. It is, after all, was said by the supposed Jesus of Nazareth to his followers that they must expect to be mocked for their beliefs, because their beliefs will appear to many people to be ridiculous, if not worse than that, and that they are to take it for granted that they will be ridiculed. That's true, I think, of the most devout and serious and thoughtful Christian. But for a vulgar fraud and crook like the Reverend Falwell, it's an obligation to say what one thinks about him, or be left off the air and have people like yourselves broadcasting only piety. And that
I'm not broadcasting only piety. I did my radio show, and now we're having you on here to talk about your view, very different than what else the media is saying.
You're having me on and then arguing that maybe it's bad taste to have me on. I don't think
that's I thought it was a legitimate
hospitable
question, because I think people are wondering.
Yeah, well, I've answered it. I've answered the question.
You have, and I will now move on to Ralph Reed, now that you've answered that question. Ralph, does Christopher Hitchens have a point? It is a free speech issue. He was a polarizing figure. Reverend Falwell was. And there are many people, maybe not all of them feeling as strong as Christopher Hitchens, but who feel that Reverend Falwell was indeed a polarizing figure. He said things that offended many Americans.
Well, look, any time, Alan, that you are an agent of change the way Dr. Falwell was, who had the kind of impact that he had on American religion, on our culture, and on our politics. He was one of the most important historical figures of the last 50 years in each of those areas, ending the self-imposed exile of evangelicals from civic and cultural engagement, and I think transforming them into one of the most important and vibrant and energetic constituencies in the entire electorate. No one does that, liberal or conservative, Republican, Democrat, of any faith. Well, and not stir controversy. But I it's just my belief as an American, not as a conservative, not as somebody of any particular denominational background or faith, but just as an American, in terms of elevating the civility of our discourse, that when somebody dies, that we ought to show a measure of respect and appreciation for their family and for their loved ones and for those who are grieving right now. And our thoughts and prayers ought to be with them, regardless of whether we agree with Dr. Falwell.
Christopher Hitchens.
Oh, come on. Play the world's smallest violin. Listen, he established a business, a racket, in my opinion. He was a religious businessman in the same way as Mr. Ralph Reed is a religious
entrepreneur. That's not wrong.
He's left the business to his children. It's a hereditary job. Let
Consolation enough.
You can't have me on and say that I have to say, I'm terribly sorry he's dead.
Hey, Christopher.
One reason you can't ask me to do that is because I am not. I think we have been rid of an extremely dangerous demagogue who lived by hatred of others and prejudice, and who committed treason by saying that the United States deserved the attack upon it
Oh,
and its civil society in
Christopher,
September
let me jump
2001
in.
by other
That's
religious
resistance,
commentators
Hitch.
like himself.
He profoundly and repeatedly apologized, and I'm sure you're perfect
Not
in your
enough.
life.
No,
I'm
he
sure
did
you're
not
perfect
enough.
in your
Not
life, and that you've never made any mistakes.
I've never committed treason like that. I don't believe in the sincerity of his
Well,
apology.
let's look at the thoughtlessness and the mean-spiritedness of your very remarks that you've made about Reverend Falwell.
By all means.
You think it's a pity that there isn't a hell for him to go to, you said.
Yes, I do.
On his death, you write the discovery of the carcass of Reverend Falwell on the floor
Indeed.
of his obscure office is
indeed.
almost zero significance, except for perhaps two categories of people, etc.
Beautiful prose, if I say so.
You also say the evil he did will live after him.
Yes.
I knew Reverend Falwell, Christopher. I know the good work that this man has done.
Tell me about it.
Well, he for
It's a lot to make me
would you
cry.
like? I
Yes.
think you're the smartest guy in the room, but you sound like a jackass when you attack his family like this.
Ooh.
But I know
didn't
I
attack
know
his
what he
family.
did
I
for
said I
unwed
don't-
mothers.
I did
I know
not-
what he did
excuse
for
me.
alcoholics. I know what he did for drug addicts.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
I did not attack his family, and no fair-minded view of yours will say that. I'm not going to be conscripted into saying that it's my job when you invite me on to discuss this man, first to say how sorry I am for him and his family. That isn't what I feel.
Keep
You,
positive.
no doubt, as a Christian,
This is a thing that like I've never seen anyone else do that Christopher Hitchens would do to people on cable news, on corporate media, is he would say something incendiary, and then they would tell they would tell him how dare you, and then he would bring up like, you cannot have me on and tell me like I may not say what I feel. Like he would do this thing that you don't see a lot of people do. Like why would you even have me on? You know what I mean? Or like I don't know, like people just get indignant. They do the thing where they get indignant and upset. But I don't know. There's something different about that because he's making like a critique of them as their show and
Right.
as journalists, and I it's just interesting to me. I don't know why that made me.
Yeah,
think,
well,
like,
I think there are two things, right? One of them is like he's doing two things there, right? One is what you just said, which is that he's doing he's like, this is such a silly exercise, right? You're having me on because I said something, and instead of giving me a chance to say why I said it, right? You're just
a point of style. It's like a point of style. Like like either do you want me to say it or not? Like
you got me here. Am I going to say my piece, or what do we do? What are we doing, right? And then the other thing he's doing is just something that he always did, which is that like when he says something that he thinks is important or he just thinks is a good line and people get pissed off about it, he's like, oh, good, you're calling attention to this. Let me say it again.
Exactly. But he's also there's also something like there's a defanging that's going on of like Fox thinks they really are doing something here. And, like when Hannity lists off all these terrible things you said and he's going, yes, oh, yes, rather good one, that, like all of that shit. Like it just completely defangs. And that's why Hannity, I think, gets a little like, bitchy in that moment and goes, I know you think you're smarter than everybody, and kind of goes there. It's because he's upset that it's not working.
Totally.
And I think that's a big thing that I was always impressed by Hitchens was style. Like he had like style and approach. Another person who was fun to see on like those on Bill Maher's show, like Politically Incorrect, was George Carlin, and the way George Carlin would just like, as soon a conservative would start like flying off the handle about something, he'd be like, would you relax? Would you calm down? Would you just relax? Like there's a way of defanging these people. We're just like, you don't you understand how you sound so silly, or just being like flagrantly proud of what he had said, of those awful things he said about Falwell, because that's what Falwell deserves, and defanging the argument at the same time. It's impressive. That's what he was really good at, I think. One of the things.
Totally. And yes, I love Kenzo's comment here, friend Kenzo Shibata. Hitchens always had that. It's the Marshawn Lynch thing, that I'm only here, so I'm just here so I don't get fined. He's like at the press conference, talking to the press. He obviously, after the Super Bowl, he obviously doesn't want to, but it's like because he got fined for refusing to talk to the press earlier. So he just answers every question by saying, I'm just here so I don't get fined.
Yes,
so Kenzo says Hitchens always had that I'm just here so I don't get fined energy, but much more hateful. Completely true, and I love where we're paused here for that. But yeah,
that's so funny. Yeah, and he's always does seem like somewhat just annoyed. I love his just very openly broadcasted annoyance. Like or he there's other times where he'd say, "Now you're tiring me out." Like, you know what I mean? Where he's just like, "This is, this is boring. You're just you're running the clock. You're bloviating." That's oh geez, Danny. Oh my gosh.
yeah.
Danny's ruthless. I love it.
Yeah. That let's
Talking about Hitchens defanging people.
Yeah. So I was actually thinking about something Danny said last night on the other stream, which is it was the John Wick joke. It was the God's not dead, but they shouldn't have killed his dog.
Yeah, starring Keanu Reeves. That was pretty good.
Yeah,
Danny's cutting it up, man. Oh my god.
Yeah. But no, I was also thinking from earlier in this stream about that Greg Gutfeld interview, and it finally hit me what it reminded me of, right? Which is that the way that Gutfeld is, and to some extent Hannity in that earlier one, but like a lot Gutfeld, right? Like the way that Gutfeld is interviewing Hitchens and kind of debating Hitchens is like kind of the same style. Like what it reminded me of was debating Charlie Kirk, because like Charlie Kirk was doing essentially the same thing, except for it was weird because it was like the 2-hour version, not the 5 minutes in between commercial breaks version. Like, but it's like essentially the same shit where you're just like, well, how about this? And then there's a reply.
The prop comic,
and then
the prop comic thing where you're just pulling another rabbit out of the hat every single time, right?
It's like, oh, well, how about this? It's like, no, we're not going to keep going with that first thing. We're just gonna move on.
Yeah.
Okay.
The difference is Gutfeld had a little more of a wink and a like kind of hamming it up, like he was kind of laughing through the whole thing. I don't think Charlie Kirk is like profoundly unfunny person. Like I can't imagine him trying, like his idea of being funny.
I wouldn't want to see that. Yeah.
Me
All right, let's
please, God, no. We'll watch God is Not Dead again.
Require hypocrisy of people. I'm sorry, you're asking.
I'm not asking for no, but I am asking for human decency. And if you don't think it has an impact on his family, to use even the phrases tonight that he's vulgar, fraud, and a crook, and then to say that the discovery of his carcass, I think you are incredibly mean, incredibly selfish, and incredibly thoughtless.
You invited me.
He's so mean. I invited you, sir.
Of The Departed, I give it to you, and you say, "Well, that might not upset his family." I said it while he was alive.
You give his opinion about
have upset his family too.
You give the opinion about him, and I'm giving the opinion about you.
Tomfoolery.
The faultlessness of your remarks here, and I'm really calling for any human decency that you may have in your pseudo intellectually superior mind of yours.
More of the debate on this coming up in a moment, and later, unbelievable video of a toddler.
We continue now. Republican strategist Ralph Reed and columnist and author Christopher Hitchens. Christopher, I interviewed you a little bit about your book just a short time ago. It made me think a lot. Jerry Falwell, because I do know him, he does a lot for people that are in trouble. He gave a lot of scholarships to his school. He helped women that were pregnant and needed help. He'd give them food and a place to live and an education. He did a lot to people that are alcoholics and et cetera, et cetera. You have your hostility towards religion, and that's without saying. I just wonder, when you compare his life, there are a lot of good atheist communists out there like Stalin and Mao and Pol Pot, and they slaughtered millions. Jerry Falwell.
He got this talking point from Big Daddy Bill.
Yeah,
that was Bill's favorite thing to say.
Yeah, that's the that is true. I mean, Jerry Falwell did nothing wrong, and all of the atheists were I don't know. Those are the only atheists you can think of: Stalin, Mao, and Pol Pot.
So the only atheists that Fox News could ever remember. They wouldn't mention Ayn Rand was an atheist, probably not, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't imagine. Which is funny because I remember they made a movie like 10 years ago or something of one of Ayn Rand's books. I don't remember if it was The Fountainhead or Atlas Shrugged.
Yeah.
But what I do remember thinking was funny is that there's like a bit role in there, like it's like a celebrity cameo kind of role from Glenn Beck. And it's like, okay, wait a second. How much do you know about Ayn Rand? Because she did not think highly of Christianity, and and there are there are clips of her where she's like talking about abortion, and she, yes, of course, I will support the fetus is a parasite.
I love like the cognitive dissonance that like right wingers will bring in Milo Yiannopoulos like to what I mean, like to further their goals because he's useful to them at the moment, and Ayn Rand like very useful to them from an ideological standpoint. But you bring her on these talk shows and she's just saying man should not subvert his reason to religion, like you see these like the studio audience just like horrified, you know what I mean? And I just like we don't get a whole lot on the left to enjoy, but I could get even fatter off of that stuff, man. Just like just watching the cognitive dissonance people on the right go through, and again, like we people would have this with Hitchens, like we thought you were useful to us, and now you're, like whether it's Andrew Sullivan or whoever, but
yeah, I've always wondered if that might be some small part, like subconsciously, of why he, like, because like, okay, the militant atheism was always part of his worldview, right?
Yeah.
Like this is stuff in the 80s where he wrote a couple of articles where he said things similar to what he would say is God is not great.
I was reading about this today in a book by this guy. You might have heard of. Go on.
Yeah. I interviewed his brother Peter Hitchens, and he told me that he thought that the anti-theism was like the most consistent part of Christopher's views, going back to, he estimated, about the age of 11. So it's like this is clearly like a deeply held thing of his, but it wasn't something he emphasized at all, really, until I mean, really the mid to late 2000s. That they have it was a little bit in like the late 90s, early 2000s, but like really, the mid to late 2000s. And there are probably a lot of reasons for that, but I have to wonder if, again, subconsciously, some part of the reason is that it just didn't sit right with him that because of his foreign policy views at this point, he was spending all of his time agreeing with these people. And so he was like, okay, what's the most core thing that I could just fundamentally like fight with them about,
Where should I stick the knife and twist it? Like where am I going to get the most leverage in that? And it really is. I mean, and that, I guess that it was a big, that's why it was so influential for me, because like hearing from people like him and I always, it's weird. Some people I force myself to listen to, right? Even though I know, like, God, like Richard Dawkins is a real asshole. Like he just, and relishes in being an asshole, and, or some people who you might consider obnoxious or whatever, I try to listen to just to, hear what they actually have to say. But at that time, it was like I was surrounded in my community by, like a lot of Christian kids, like, and it like the culture war totally existed among students in high school. I remember when Bush won re-election and all the Republican kids who knew we didn't want him to were, like, running at us in the halls and, making fun of us and stuff. Cause, we didn't want, more senseless violence in the Middle East or, what have you. And, being able to attack them at the place that is most like, I mean, this shit is part of their whole being. It's from when they're little kids. Yeah, it's very intimate, and and I was like a troll. You know what I mean? I remember in AP English, I started referring to Lord of the Rings as like my religion, and I would get very upset with them if I was kind of cringe in that way. I have a Lord of the Rings tattoo, by the way, on my arm, but I would be like, don't belittle my people. We've been held down long enough, that kind of stuff. And it was just like, if you could get at them at that place, it was deeply upsetting to them. And again, when you have no power, when you have no political power, and the Democrats are a fucking joke, then what else do you have? It's kind of sad. It's cynical, but that's that really.
No, I think there's something there. Yeah,
I'm being honest here.
Yeah. No, so it's that might be it a little bit, right? It's like, okay, so we happen to have fallen into the same conclusion of foreign policy, but I still hate these people. So
yeah. He's like the Dwight meme, the Dwight laughing at something, and then the other person's there, and he's ooh, it's like he's like, oh my, I'm among all these people. Well, I can't let them get too comfortable.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
Well, slaughtered nobody in his life. He may have misspoke once or twice, but he
never
devoted
slaughtered
his life to
nobody.
his religion. You have nothing good to say.
God, it's like Gutfeld's mom. He's not Gutfeld's mom driving planes into buildings,
Yeah, totally. No, he never slaughtered anybody. I mean, he did. He was like an enemy of the civil rights movement, and he did. And he did spend decades, crusading against, letting gay people, live normal lives, but and etc. Right, but whatever. He didn't kill anybody. I mean, that's the standard, right?
God, oh man, with standards like that, geez, it's well, but that was the great thing about the Mother Teresa book too. She was much more of a sacred cow than like Falwell. Everybody kind of recognized Falwell was much too boorish. You know what I mean? Everybody kind of knew well what he was. And to me, this is very like Hannity is working a little overtime to try to defend. He never slaughtered anybody, like Pol Pot and Stalin, or you know what I mean? Like
No, that's it. I mean, it's like was Jerry Falwell as bad as Pol Pot? No, in that case, he was a wonderful person.
Hey, sometimes when I'm feeling like, I need to lose some weight, you can always look at like,
you think, okay, but are there any killing fields that I'm responsible for?
Or is this that's easy to compare? Like if I'm feeling overweight, I can go watch like My 800-Pound Life on, TLC and be like, well, it's not that bad. I mean, Jerry Falwell was, and
I hope it says that on his tombstone. Didn't commit genocide.
Or what? Oh, I can't remember what bit that's reminding me of, but I there's more I want to get to the end of it, but I can't remember what I wanted to circle back on, but let's
say about him at all.
No, I repeat, Jerry Falwell lived on hatred and superstition and bigotry. He preached dislike of people whose lives he knew nothing about. He raised money from credulous fools.
You don't know anything about
Here it comes. Yeah.
Now, excuse me, sir. You can either ask me on and ask my opinion, or you may not. But I don't have to be here if you're going to take that attitude.
Well, you leave.
You spent the first half by saying I had no right to the opinion you'd asked me on to express. Now you're tiring me out. I repeat, though.
No, what I said is your opinion was thoughtless. What you wrote was crude and mean and hateful. That's what I said.
You took up all the time for my answer with your long, rather unlettered question.
Yes.
Jerry Falwell made a career out of sponsoring dislike and superstition, said that people he didn't like were going to hell, said the United States deserved to be attacked by Islamic fascists, said he believed that people would be raptured into heaven, leaving all the rest of us to wallow behind. I think his death is a deliverance. And if you say that someone who occasionally makes a charitable donation is a good person, then you have to say that Hamas and Hezbollah, who do all this charitable giving,
how
and
dare he
charitable
practice
organizing
religion
are the same.
in a country that celebrates it, Ralph Reed?
Sean, you know, look,
And why not?
I just-
Why not a word now from the friend of Jack Abramoff?
Wait, we only have a
Give
moment.
us-
Yes!
Here's an important question.
That's all I
This
need
one's
now.
the
Ralph
best
from
one.
the Abramoff faction.
We only have a moment
And
left.
now
Just
we're
rip
Yeah,
off
from the
others.
Abramoff.
You should be
Ralph,
ashamed
hold
of
on,
yourself.
hold on, Christopher. Ralph, the
Oh!
big controversy about Jerry Falwell was he fused religion and politics. And that's what
Right.
people
Smile.
will be debating, I guess, going forward.
Look at
And
shit
after he
eating.
said he would not do such a thing, would Jesus have advocated the GOP, and was he right to bring in
What a
and
question.
marry those two and give that impression? We only have a very short time left, Ralph.
Well, I don't think that's ever what Dr. Falwell said. What he said was that there were certain transcendent values, such as the protection of innocent human life, the sanctity of marriage, the need to defend the state of Israel, his opposition to communism, his opposition to
Get them all in.
Israeli
Shoehorn.
jihadism, and what he believed was that those values should be reflected in public policy. And I think that, you know, when you have a community of Liberty University with its 10,000 students in residence, you have 22,000 members of his church, you have millions of others of people who looked up to him and admired him. I would really hope that people like Christopher would show the decency and respect to let those people mourn
Tell it to Jack
and remember
Abramoff.
his memory
Tell
without
it
being
to Jack
torn down and
Abramoff.
attacked.
Tell it.
Oh
All right,
my
I
God.
believe.
Wait, you're missing the final dig.
No. I know.
Okay.
I want to
All right,
save
all
for the last 9 seconds here, but I just I do want to just give a little love for a moment to you know, by all means, let's hear from the friend of Jack Abramoff. Like that's a nice touch.
That was a chef kiss moment, and again, just like, I mean, like, I don't know. I know what the question I have for you, but let's let the final,
Yeah.
one of the greatest digs of all time.
That's your business partner.
Good try, Christopher.
Tell it
Was
to
a
your
personal
racketeer
friend of mine,
friends.
and I'll miss him. When we come
If you
back,
gave
Colorado
Falwell
gets
an
too
animal,
close
he could be
to
buried
a
in a
dancing
matchbox.
performance in Times Square.
Oh my God. For anyone who missed it, if you gave Abramoff, or if you gave
Falwell an enema, you could have buried him in a matchbox.
incredible. I fumbled it. Incredible. Like one of the greatest.
Oh.
Creative. I mean, very creative wordsmith, rhetorician. Like it's and this is the question I have for you, Ben, as someone who spends a lot of his time debating, a master debater of the right. What role and how, like, Hitchens is using humiliation in a very, like, I mean, in only the way he could, right? That, like, it earned him the nickname Hit Slap. But, like, what do you see as the role for when do you actually engage an opponent versus when, like, they are so ridiculous? Like, I think he knows who he's talking to, and that's why he couldn't even let that guy have his say before he framed everything he was going to say. Let's hear from the friends of Jack Abramoff. You know what I mean? Like that kind of humiliation.
Well, I would also say that part of the deal here, like, you know, Christopher Hitchens did like real long form debates with everybody from, you know, William Lane Craig to Douglas Wilson to, you know, John Lennox, whatever, like all of these guys, right? And he was, you know, I mean, whatever. I mean, he was like, he didn't hold back. I mean, like, he'd talk about how, you know, like heaven was like North Korea and stuff like that. But he did, you know, but he would like respectfully, you know, engage with their arguments. Part of the difference, I mean, I think there are two things. One, I think somebody, like, even though some of these people that I just mentioned were like real lunatics, I also think that he had some level of respect for them that he just does not have for like Ralph Reed, like as a human being.
Oh my God.
And,
Yeah.
you know,
Yes.
like I mean, he basically calls him a grifter earlier in that clip.
Yeah.
You know, so he says that, you know, Falwell ran his religion as a business, you know, just as Ralph Reed does. And then so that's one thing. But then the other thing is, like, I think the format also makes a difference here. That it's not like, you know, he's not like spending. It's not like if he were like debating one of the gemstone children at Liberty University for 2 hours. You know, like he's got like 4.5 minutes between commercial breaks. I think whatever he says, he's gonna make sure it stands out.
Yeah, he needs. There's got to be lots of barbs in it to stick, right? It's
Yeah. Also in this case too. I mean, like I think that he, he got to like the first Hannity clip was much more sort of like Hitchens on a Tuesday night, and the Gutfeld clip for that matter, right? It's like kind of the same thing. Like this is by the end of that, because like the whole thing was, like I don't know, the Kolb standing in the background like the little guy in the cartoon going, while he's being held back, right? And then
yeah.
And then Hannity like puffing up his chest and like being like righteously indignant and scolding Hitchens for having said these horrible things in such bad taste.
So much for the tolerant left.
Yeah, exactly. It's like this is what he brought him on for, to like scold him, right? Like that's the only thing that he brought him on for, to sit there while he was being scolded. And Hitchens realizes that. He's very explicit about it. It's like, you can bring me out. Am I going to say my piece here or not? Right? I don't have to be here. And then by the end, he's just thoroughly pissed off, which is why like he brings his rhetorical A game at the very end before they go to commercial break.
Doesn't care at that point. Just it's not pulling any punches anymore. That was that's one of my favorite moments, because that guy, man, and we were talking about with God's Not Dead, the shoehorn, the right wing shoehorn, where he's like Jerry Falwell, he stood against communism and supported Israel, and if it were today, and he stood up to the SJWs, like they just shoehorn everything in there. And man, Hitchens, man, it's just like that's what he was good for at this time, was like I'm just glad he didn't let them forget. You know what I mean? Like, we're not friends. I may feel this way about the war, but I'm not your fucking friend. And that's what the new atheism was. Good for. I would love to have a longer conversation sometime of like how new atheism spins out into like, kind of weird right wing or just anti-leftism.
Yeah, I mean, I think my my take on that is it's an element of it that does, but I also think we should be a little careful about that, because like again, my sense is that, and I'm not saying that there wasn't always lots of Islamophobia, there was, right? But they have but my sense is that most grassroots new atheists were still very anti-Bush and, at least opposed to the Iraq War. And
I was.
Yeah.
I've been in the demo,
Yeah. I mean, all the ones I knew were, right? So and even on the leadership level, right? I mean, like, I think it's also important to remember, like Hitchens' foreign policy views, even in that group, made him a little bit of an outlier. Like nobody was like a Chomsky, right? But there were, but like Harris was like the closest to Hitchens' foreign policy position, and even he was like a little ambivalent about Iraq. And Dawkins was against the Iraq War. Like not, like I said, not like the way he should have been or whatever, but like he was against it in a sort of like normal liberal way. And Dennett, I don't know if anybody ever asked him what his foreign policy views were, but Dennett's kind of the guy who's like, you have to remember, like, wait a minute, be like, wait, okay, Hitchens, Harris, Dawkins.
And Dennett, yeah. The
other Dennett, one, yeah,
like
the other one,
third
right?
tenor. He's like the third tenor.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like, okay, there's definitely like a wing of new atheism that like, both leadership and grassroots that like mutated into like just unpleasant anti-woke culture war stuff. That definitely happened. But I also think that the story people tell about this like flattens a lot of this, because like there's also like, okay, Dawkins pretty much just kept being Dawkins, like the good parts, the bad parts, the embarrassing parts, like all of it, right? Like he just, it's always, it's always 2007 in Dawkins Land. And then, Dennett, who knows, who cares, right? Hitchens died. Harris did go IDW, but he was also like the softest part of the IDW, and he in some ways, right? I mean, because he was like, because I mean, it is telling, right? He's the one who like wants nothing to do with that label now because of the like COVID stuff and 2020 election stuff, right? So
and David,
all that, right? But then, like at a grassroots level, I feel like, okay, sure. Is there a recognizable kind of guy who was a new atheist in the late 2000s, and then like by 2018 somehow who's a Jordan Peterson fan? Absolutely, there is, right? But I also feel like there's a recognizable kind of guy who was a new atheist in the late 2000s, might still have some, complicated fondness for that, and is like a Bernie bro by like 2018, right? Like I feel like there are actually a lot of those guys.
Hey, you're looking at one of them, man. You're looking at one of them. Somebody in the comments is asking what happened to the anti-war movement, and I wouldn't say I went to sleep under Obama, but I just remember the despondency as like, I remember being well aware of escalating the drone wars, just all I mean, killing American citizens with drone strikes and his immigration machine. I was aware of all of that as it was going on, and it was just like total despondency. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, well, this is what we get from Democrats, and so I guess I'm somewhat guilty of retreating into the atheism stuff because I think I talked about this once, maybe with Leisha Brooks, and for the Michael Brooks Legacy Project. And there's so many people who get into the new atheism stuff because, like they say, intellectual dark web. They put it right in the name. I'm doing an intellectual thing. I'm being, I'm having these discussions and these arguments, ideas, these big ideas, and but it really is divorced from all the stuff that matters, the politics. Even Sam Harris, when he was weighing in, it was all these, he was trying to make all these abstractions about torture. Well, I'm not for the war, but here's this this weird pseudo philosophical argument for why we shouldn't care that we're torturing people, like this kind of weird liberal war hawkery.
That's who Harris was. I mean, like that he was. Harris was like a pretty, like Harris was a somewhat more typical version of a war on terror liberal than Hitchens was, because because Hitchens like took it that extra step where he actually like full-throatedly supported the war in Iraq, right? Whereas like more typically somebody like that would have been like Harris, where it's like, yeah, Afghanistan for sure. Should we general framework of a global war on terror for sure. Iraq, yeah, maybe. I don't know.
You're taking me out of context. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, and like, more than anything, I mean, all these, I mean, he didn't, and like in some ways, I actually think Harris really was more like what some leftists think that Hitchens was, that he was like, like he was just like really afraid of Muslims, that was, that was what's driving a lot of it.
If you go back and watch like that embarrassingly titled video, the Four Horsemen video, where they're all sitting around Hitchens' living room talking, there's like some moments where, Hitchens, it's almost like, yes, Sam, we've already agreed to that. Let's move forward. Like when you're not, like almost, like, okay, that's nice. That's very nice, dear. You're doing just fine. You're doing just fine. It was really like, Hitchens just obviously knew so much more. He could bring history, into it all. And we all know how Sam Harris feels about history, right? It's entirely irrelevant, So that was just, those things were clarifying. And when Hitchens died, it was just like, oh, okay, well, like there's this vacuum, and Sam Harris was really the new atheist putting out, not so new anymore, putting out like the most consistent content, and just weird, just weird. I remember his Why I Don't Criticize Israel podcast.
Yes.
Just being like, just like, whoa, I don't know what meme best like describes the kind of like, what is up with this guy, man? Like how could, like,
yeah. So somebody in the chat points out that I used the word was when talking about Harrison in the strictest technical sense. He is still alive. So there you go.
It's weird to me because, like, again, this is how I discovered Michael Brooks. It's how I discovered you, and really kind of reaffirming like leftism and rather than this, I don't know, like just the apoliticalness of. I mean, you see like in all the different ways that all the famous atheists, the amazing atheists, or the iron skeptic, or all these like weirdos, and how they all kind of all the directions they went in. I've just totally lost my train of thought. It was about Sam Harris and just how, I obviously realized like this guy, like this ain't Christopher Hitchens. You know what I mean? Like I can see where Christopher Hitchens was wrong, but at least I get all these other things from, reading him or watching him. But then I just remembered like going back when, during 2020 when, Sam Harris is the guy who read like ISIS's magazine on his podcast to be like, this is what they think. And then after the El Paso shooter, Walmart shooter published his eco-fascist screed on 4chan, Sam Harris was saying, oh, well, obviously this guy is trolling. He doesn't really believe. Like all of these murderous white nationalists don't really believe any of this stuff. You can't take them at their word that they believe it. They're trolling. Like, it's just like, it was like a fucking funhouse mirrors, man. I didn't get how, I mean, I did. It was affirming of all that shit that you hoped wasn't going on.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just feel ashamed how much time you listen to the guy,
Yeah.
There's a lot there. Sorry.
No, that's good. I liked it. I think.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I know Sam Harris is dead.
That's right.
Oh
That's
my
right.
God.
And yeah, was funny when we had the guy from we had Peas from Very Bad Wizards on, and it was me and Ryan Lake, talking to him, and Ryan and I kind of like, I don't even remember how it came up, but like it was like one of the subjects where like Harris makes some awful argument, and so we just sort of like reflexively fell into the Harris bashing. And I was like, oh yeah, right, you're actually friends with that dude, aren't you? Okay, sorry. Let me find a friend of mine and say some shit about him, make you feel better. But
move along.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh no, that's good. I only read ISIS for the articles.
So someone pointed out they have a really good recipe for apple pie in that magazine. Oh my God.
Yeah.
So
no, I'm just imagining the person's reading the ISIS magazine. Like that's, they're like, are there like, what's the context where you like read the ISIS magazine? Like, is that like, do you sort of set aside like Sunday morning, I'm going to like catch up on like, I'm going to read the whole ISIS magazine, or is it like you catch like an article every now and again, it's
in between it's in between your copies of Jacobin and The Nation, right?
Well, you try to read a wide variety of perspectives, get the,
of course.
Don't be
Mother Jones, The Economist.
Don't be in a bubble.
Yeah, ISIS. It's all good. Oh my gosh, that's insane.
Yeah.
What a weird time that was. I mean, we think the Trump years were weird, but like the second half of Bush into the first half of or the last 2 years of Bush into the first 2 years of Obama, like as the economic downturn happened, like that was a very strange time, because like 9/11 was still ringing in everybody's ears.
Yeah.
And it was like, I mean, I really have taken the critique that I hear from you, from Adolph Reed, from Pascal and Jason at This Is Revolution, that like the left, that in a lot of ways there is not a left, and a lot of it is just like there's no coherent narrative and there's no positive vision. And someone was asking earlier, where's the anti-war left? I think a lot of it was there in the Bernie campaign. Like you said, this like through line of anti-war, against the war in Iraq, against the Patriot Act, to maybe getting caught up in new atheism world because F Bush, man, F Bush stickers and all that stuff. Bush lied, people died. One of the
I think I actually had that. Literally had that sticker. The Bush lied, people died.
Yeah. No war for oil. And all of those ones. To the Bernie campaign. And I think that's the thing. Bernie. I won't stop giving him credit for like at least like for me it's always Lord of the Rings like metaphors, but like lighting the beacon, at least like reminding people a little bit of what we could do or what we could say or think, or at least just broadcast to people.
Absolutely.
Oh my god. There was also, to a bit about that. This was also like when the Charlie Hebdo thing was like, like a huge conversation that, and I remember, feeling different ways about it.
Sure.
And so, yeah, it was a weird, complicated time.
Yeah, no, for sure. And the Hebdo thing is weird. That'd actually be interesting to revisit sometime. Kind of try to sort all that out, since look, I was about to say I have no idea what I think about that. To be clear, I do know what I think about marching into like newspaper offices to murder cartoonists with submachine guns, right?
Yeah.
I think you shouldn't do that, but like the sort of meta stuff about Hebdo, right? Like that they wasn't like was the magazine like kind of was the content objectionable? If you say the content was objectionable, does that mean that like you don't really oppose like doing that to them, like that you must be insinuating they deserve it? And it's like, I don't know. Look, I don't read French. It's not like I'd ever heard of Charlie Hebdo before the massacre happened. So I don't know if I'd feel the same way about it now if I went back and looked at everything that was written about it. But like my feeling at the time was, look, I have no idea what the content of Charlie Hebdo was like. I can't speak to that. But what bothered me about it, the way that people talked about it, was that it's like, in order to like really count as really truly for sure condemning the attack, the massacre, you had to say, I am Charlie Hebdo, and Charlie Hebdo is amazing, and they should be getting past, journalism awards. It's like, I don't know. I always thought that the standard was like, that like the whole point about free speech was that it doesn't matter whether you agree with them or not, right? Like that you can hate somebody and still support their free speech, right? And so like saying that you're only really supporting their free speech if you like them sort of always felt like it was missing the point to me.
Yeah, totally. I hate CNN as much as the next guy, but when like that crazy MAGA bomber dude was sending them or whatever, it's like
that's bad, right? Like
we should say we could say that's bad, and it is hard for some people to just state the obvious. Hey, that's bad. Invading a sovereign nation or starting an unnecessary war is bad, even when we don't do it, or but that's another.
No, for sure, right? Like
sure.
We watched on one of these a couple weeks ago. We watched the probably the most WWE-ish debate we ever have or ever will show on this channel, which was Destiny and Dylan Burns arguing with Jackson Hinkle and Infrared Haas, the Kremlin Gremlin, about the invasion of Ukraine, which is hilarious.
I watched some of that, Ben. I watched some and it really hurt. I just
no, that's fair. That's
years
fair.
off my life, Ben.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? It's like which I mean, whatever. Like, I kind of knew that was going to be a shit show and it was going to be entertaining, and I was willing to just be like, fuck it, I'll watch it, But like, but also,
you ever go? Sorry, do you ever go to the gas station? You buy like the big bag of Bugles, like the worst fucking snack food. Sorry, go ahead. Obviously, I do sometimes, not all the time. Or combos. That's like the combos of like
it's
pepperoni pizza.
I'll cop to that. This was definitely some like, I'm going to buy some gas station food, of like a debate viewing. But but also there's part of me that was just like fascinated, right? I wanted to see, because it's like, okay, like, dumbasses will call me a Putin apologist because like I don't think we should start World War III and etc. Right? But and I think I think some of the backstory is more complicated than blah 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 blah, right? But it's like, in terms of the actual invasion, like I just take it for granted that obviously that's wrong. That like, of course, there's nothing that could ever justify doing that. But so I was kind of fascinated to see. It's like, okay, what kind of argument are these guys going to come up with? Like what's their defense of why this is an okay thing to do? And it sort of turned out their defense was like, screaming and like changing the subject and whatever. So I guess that's not that surprising.
It's one way of doing it, I guess.
Yeah.
Didn't work for Hannity.
No, it did not. I don't think he came out of that looking good to anybody.
But also, I'm no Bill Maher. I'm not going to compare Destiny or whoever else to. You're like a young Christopher Hitchens on Twitch. You're like a video game playing Christopher Hitchens. You're like Christopher Hitchens with Hearthstone. This Vosh guy, let me tell you, you should run for president, Vosh. Jesus, I got to work on my Bill Maher impression because he's embarrassing sometimes. God.
Yeah. No.
With friends like these. Jeez.
No,
with
exactly.
Allies like these.
Yeah. I mean, look, I don't like Destiny, but that is a pretty easy, that is a pretty easy call, and so he was right about that, and he was entertaining about it. At least, got to give him that. Especially because like it was so obvious that like so much of his agenda there was just debate, infrared, like, and because like he knew he would get like screamy and crazy.
There you go. That's one way of doing it. I guess maybe Hitchens was doing a little bit of that, like falling into the ropes a little bit with Hannity there, wasn't he?
No, I think so, right? Like, and I think that he, I think he would have. I mean, whatever. I don't want to valorize this stuff too much because I do think that like Hitchens was capable of, I mean, obviously there are debates where he's like, you watch him and it's like, oh, he is like hungover to the point where he could like barely get it together to stay in this room, and like he's just kind of like phoning it in by repeating things he said in other debates, and those Hitchens debate definitely are out there. You can find some of them on YouTube, but like he is also willing to have like real searching, interesting debates with these people. But I think that with Hannity, he was like, okay, like, you're being a huge asshole. I'm not going to have time to say anything substantive. I'm just going to like, I am just going to like stick in the knife here in the funniest way I can think of.
Yeah, his job there is to humiliate, and he did not disappoint. He really did not disappoint.
Yeah, no, exactly. All right. Well, people should check out Joe's his personal channel, and also his movie podcast he does with our own Jandrew World, Bad Takes.
Political Pain. I'm on a unofficial hiatus right now because school has been a bit demanding, but I'm an independent journalist. I do some local coverage of stuff going on in my area of the Central Coast of California, and then I talk politics. I've had Ben on the show. Go check out Ben and I talked about Hitchens some more on my channel. I've had on C. Derek Varn, Jason from This Revolution. So good folks.
Branko Marcetic. Oh no, he was on Bad Takes. I saw that.
Branko Marcetic was on there with a. What movie did we do for that one? I can't remember.
Primary Colors, was that it?
That's right. Oh my gosh, yeah. We talked about the Clintons a lot. That was that's a weird movie. Primary Colors. Kathy Bates goes full Vince Foster in that movie.
Yeah,
that's a surprising choice.
All of the talk about the new Atheism eras reminded me. Have you ever done an episode on Southland Tales?
On what now?
Do you know this movie, Southland Tales?
No, Southland Tales.
Southland, all one word. Tales is the second word.
No.
Okay,
no,
well, Google that. Google that later. This is, if you've never seen Southland Tales, I think you. I don't know if I'd exactly call it a good movie, but it's a memorable movie and one that I'm sort of oddly fond of. So
it's got The Rock and Stifler from American Pie. Okay, Justin Timberlake's in it.
Justin Timberlake is indeed in it. Yep, I believe he sings the song in it. Yep.
Sarah Michelle Gellar. Wow.
Yeah, no, it is a star-studded, weird-ass, completely forgotten movie.
All right, Andy, I think we know this is what Ben wants. I know Andy's watching. This will be the next time we have you on. Cool. Thank you for that. Oh my God, that looks like a weird movie I'm looking at.
It is such a weird movie. It is hard to overstate. It's basically like, what's it? Richard Kelly after he'd done Donnie Darko, and which whatever. That's like legitimately one of my favorite movies. But after that, he. In some ways, you can see some of the same preoccupations in this movie, but it is just such a weirder movie, and it does not quite work, but it is like a fascinating mess.
Jesus. 2006. Set in the near future of 2008, the film is a portrait of Los Angeles and a satiric commentary on the military-industrial complex and the infotainment industry. That sounds like something we need to watch. Talk about. So,
yeah. Wow. All right. Meanwhile, though, I was on. That's Political Pain. That's
please sub everyone. Please at Political Pain. I've been commenting in the chat. Please sub.
Yeah, that's Payne. Pain spelled that way. And I was on Bad Takes last night. Very relevant to our subject here, talking about God's not dead. So
yeah, and I simulcast that on my channel too, so people can find that there as well. But yeah, check out Bad Takes Pod. Please sub there as well. If you aren't sick of this and you want another couple hours of me and Joe talking about like new atheism era religious stuff, as well, of course, as Andy, and as well as Dan Walden. He had a really great stuff to say too.
Yeah. The socialist, writer, scholar, unrepentant papist, but very sharp guy. So it was really, and he brings a lot actually in that discussion. So
that was great. It was great. Yeah.
Yep.
Andy was waiting for that episode, and I think he got everything he wanted.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, man. Well, we will cut it there for tonight. But we are going to be back on Monday with an episode. We're going to have a couple of guys from the What's Left of Philosophy podcast on. We've had their co-host Lillian on like a bunch of times, but these guys haven't been on before, so should be a really good discussion. That's coming up Monday. We will we'll see you guys then. You should subscribe to all Joe's shit. Left is best.
Thanks for having me on.